says spring like Easter eggs. And in today's video, I'll show you how I created 4 of them. They're each in a different style, including stained glass, Pique Assiette, glass tile, and beads. We'll go step by step through each one. Let's get to it. Welcome back, and if you're new here, my name is Julie. And on this channel, we talk about tips, tricks, tools, adhesives, materials, and specific mosaic projects, all to shorten your learning curve when it comes to creating mosaic art. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, please consider subscribing. We're so close to spring on the calendar, can you feel it? And that means flowers, bunnies, and yep, you guessed it, Easter eggs. Eggs are a fun mosaic project, not only because you're working on a curved surface, but also because pretty much anything goes design-wise. Plus, they're pretty small, and if you're not enjoying the tiling process, it'll be over before you know it. I've made some mosaic eggs in the past and have enjoyed hearing the stories from clients who have purchased them. One client said she and her sister exchanged a decorated egg every year at Easter. What a sweet tradition! So not only are they adorable sitting in an Easter basket or on your coffee table, but they make a really nice gift. And so in today's video, I'll take you step by step through all 4 eggs. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get started. Before I begin tiling, I need to prep all 4 substrates. Now I'm using solid wood eggs, but sometimes you can find them made out of materials like ceramic, glass, or concrete. Eggs come in a variety of sizes, and I'll list a bunch down below in the description. You may not need to prep your eggs depending on what they're made of, but if yours are like mine and they're made of wood, then you'll be required to prep your eggs before you begin tiling. I did a video here on the channel all about how to prep your wood substrates for mosaic, and I'll include a link down below in the description so you can check it out. So I'll prep the eggs and let them sit overnight before I begin tiling. Please note, I will include a full list of all of the substrates, materials, tools, adhesive, and grout that I'm using in today's video in case you'd like to make some mosaic eggs of your own. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to take you step by step through each of the 4 mosaic egg designs and also introduce you to their unique materials for each. So let's get started with the first example. For this one, I used stained glass exclusively. I got started by picking out glass in lime green, turquoise, purple, orange, and yellow. To me, these colors are like spring, Easter. Gorgeous. I cut or scored the glass into thin strips using a Thomas grip glass cutter, and then I used running pliers to break the glass or break the score. I have done a video here on the channel about how to cut stained glass for mosaic, and I'll include a link down below in the description so you can check it out. For my design, I needed the yellow glass strips cut into small sections. These will act as a divider for the other colors on the egg, so I measured some pieces and marked them with a permanent marker and then cut them down with my wheeled glass nippers. Once that was done, I cut down the other colors of glass even further into random shaped pieces using wheeled glass nippers. For the adhesive, I'm using Epoxy Sculpt exclusively on all of the eggs. It's an excellent choice for this type of substrate. And yep, you guessed it, I recently did a video here on the channel all about how to use epoxy sculpt in Mosaic, and I'll include a link down below in the description so you can check it out. Now, although I'm using epoxy sculpt exclusively, that doesn't mean you can't use things like weld bond, thin set, or even tile adhesive. Those work just fine as well. However, I've found that the incredible hold of the epoxy sculpt works really well on this curved surface, which honestly can be a little bit of a challenge. For the design on your egg, you can either tile as you like or draw a freehand design onto the substrate. Or like what I did on this particular egg, I got out a seamstress measuring tape and used the straight edge as my guide. It worked beautifully. I smoothed on the epoxy sculpt using this mini spatula tool. It did a great job of spreading the adhesive across the substrate and into smaller areas as well. Now, as we know with epoxy sculpt, there is a somewhat short working window. So I made sure my pieces of glass were all cut to my liking before I got started with adhering the pieces to the substrate. I started by tiling the yellow divider pieces of glass. These divider pieces are creating sections which I will fill with other colors. Then I quickly got started tiling in the individual sections of the egg. Having the pieces of glass cut ahead of time allowed the tiling to go very quickly. And because the epoxy sculpt does such a great job with holding onto the tesserae, I was able to handle the egg without disturbing the pieces I had just adhered to the substrate. Every so often I did press down on the tesserae to make sure things were stuck in place and that they were making contact with the epoxy sculpt. It's helpful that the stained glass is all the same thickness. I don't have to worry about building up the adhesive on the backs of any of these pieces. Tiling on a curved surface, especially a small egg like this, is challenging enough. So I eliminated one headache by using tesserae in the same thickness. And once I'm done tiling, I'll just look over the egg to make sure everything is where I want it to be and to make sure I haven't missed any spots. And then I'll let it sit and fully cure before I move on to the grouting. This next egg is tiled in a Pique Assiette style. Now, Pique Assiette means thief of plates in French, and it's combining plates, tiles, found objects into a mosaic to create a truly unique piece. I've done a number of videos here on the channel all about Pique Assiette Mosaic, and I will include a link to the full playlist down below in the description so you can check it out. The pieces of ceramic and porcelain that I'm using on this egg are the remaining pieces I had pulled for the framed ungrouted mosaic that I recently did on this channel. I'll include a link to that video down below. I used my wheeled glass nippers to cut down the tesserae into smaller pieces. Again, I cut all of my tesserae ahead of mixing up the epoxy sculpt since that adhesive had a limited working window. I made sure the pieces were small enough that they could adhere to the substrate fully. I didn't want any points sticking out or away from the substrate. Once I got the tesserae all cut, I mixed up a batch of epoxy sculpt and got started smoothing it onto the substrate. For the design, I started at the smaller end of the egg and adhered pieces of pink tesserae around the top. Then I moved on to red, turning the egg and making sure I dispersed the colors all the way around the egg, almost like it was a line or row of color. After red, I got to work with pieces of orange tesserae. Every so often, I took a moment to turn the egg around to make sure I was evenly distributing the colors. After orange, I got to work on yellow tesserae, and then green. I was able to use a few longer pieces of tesserae by cutting them in half and then adhering them close to each other on the substrate, like this leaf patterned piece. After adhering the green tesserae, I finished off with blue and then purple. Once I was done tiling, I took a look around the entire surface of the egg to make sure nothing had moved and that I didn't miss a spot. And then I let it sit and fully cure before I moved on to the grouting. The third example includes 3/4 inch vitreous glass tile in orange, green, blue, and light gray. I started by cutting down the pieces of glass using my wheeled glass nippers. And then I cut the orange tile into thirds, which made them into thin strips. And for the green, blue, and light gray tile, I cut them into quarters and then into triangles. Once all of the cutting was done, I mixed up a batch of epoxy sculpt and got started with adhering the orange tile around the center of the substrate. Next, I started adhering a line of the triangles along the border of the orange glass. Again, because I did all of the cutting ahead of time, the tiling went rather quickly, and I was able to stay within the working window of the epoxy sculpt. Once I was done with a line of triangles, I continued tiling the triangles on the end of the substrate in a random pattern. And I continued this design on the other end of the egg as well. It's a bit wider of a grout line than my usual, but I like the open feel around the triangle tesserae. And then I let it sit and fully cure before I moved on to the grouting. The fourth and final egg is by no means a quick mosaic. No way. This egg took a while, but the end result is just wow. Wow. Fabergé eggs were the inspiration for this design, but I did not use crystals or fine gemstones. For this egg, I'm using some small metallic silver thin barrel beads and then some seed beads in a bunch of different colors. To get started, I drew a design onto the substrate. I wanted sections of color that were divided by the silver metallic beads. So I mixed up epoxy sculpt and got to work with adhering the silver metallic beads. I adhered them all the way around the substrate. And then got to work with the first section of colorful seed beads. I'm adhering orange seed beads one at a time and sometimes two at a time. I used one of the straight metal picks from my Mosaic tools set. I'll link it below. It was a lifesaver with picking up one and sometimes two beads at a time and getting them onto the substrate exactly where I wanted them to be placed. I didn't want the hole or opening of the bead to show, so I was very careful in how I placed the bead on the substrate. Every so often I would press down the beads to make sure that they were making contact with the epoxy sculpt. Next, I got to work adhering the turquoise seed beads to the substrate. But then I unexpectedly needed to stop working, so I had to pull off all of the silver metallic beads which weren't bordering orange or turquoise beads. That happens sometimes, right? And we get called away from our work. So I just had to go with the flow and pull them all off since I couldn't continue tiling at that time. Remember, epoxy sculpt cures to a rock hard finish. So whether that's on your tools or your substrate, you need to make sure that everything is cleared off, tools, substrate, whatever, before you end working for that day. Once I was ready to get back to work, I worked in sections instead by tiling the silver metallic beads and the colorful seed beads just for a section. And then I moved on to the next section. So the last bead section was red, and by this point I felt like I was cruising. I knew what I was doing, everything was great. Not really, but I kept telling myself how well I was doing. This egg took a long time. Once the colorful seed bead sections were done, I let the egg sit overnight to fully cure, and I really could have used an adult beverage to wind down. The next day I got to work tiling the ends of the substrate. I used two different whites of seed beads, a solid and a pearl. There were subtle differences in their color and I love the look. And once the egg was beaded, I let it sit and fully cure. This egg will not be grouted, so it's considered done and finished at this point. Now it's time to do some grouting, and I'll be grouting the first three eggs, which is the stained glass, Pique Assiette, and glass tile. I'm going to use sanded charcoal gray grout for all three of them. I got started by mixing up my grout and let it sit for 5 minutes before I got started. If you'd like to see how I mix up small batches of grout for Mosaic, I'll include a link down below in the description so you can check it out. So the grout is ready to be used, and I'll get started by spooning on a small amount of grout onto the stained glass egg and smoothing it over the substrate. I'll carefully push the grout into the grout line by going in a clockwise, counterclockwise motion. And once I'm done, I'll move on to the Pique Assiette egg. Doing the same thing of going slow and pushing the grout into the grout line. Because there are different thicknesses with these materials, I'm going a little slower to avoid knocking a piece of tessera off. These eggs are pretty small and take very little time to grout, even when going slowly. And finally, I'll grout the vitreous glass egg. I tend to go a little faster on the eggs which have materials that are the same thickness. But still, I try to be careful not to go too fast and risk knocking a piece of tessera off. And once all three eggs are grouted, I'll let them sit and dry for about 15 to 20 minutes before I come back and clean them off. Okay, the eggs have been sitting here drying and are now ready to be cleaned off. I'm using dry paper towels to remove the excess grout. I'll go in the order that I grouted, which means I'll start with the stained glass egg. I'll carefully go over the substrate surface in a clockwise, counterclockwise motion, cleaning off the excess grout. You want to be careful that you don't rub too hard, that you remove any grout from the grout line, or risk knocking a piece of tessera off. And I'll continue cleaning off the excess grout from each of the remaining eggs. For the Pique Assiette egg, I'm very careful with grout removal since the pieces are at a slightly different height on the surface. And then I'll move on to the vitreous glass egg. This one is pretty straightforward since the tesserae are all at the same height. I am carefully going to clean the ends though, since I have a little bit wider of a grout line between those triangle pieces. I don't want to accidentally remove any grout from the grout line there. Once the eggs were cleaned off from the grout, I went back over them and made sure all of the edges of the tesserae were exposed. And then I polished everything up. And there you have it. Mosaic eggs in 4 different styles using stained glass, ceramic, porcelain, vitreous glass, and beads. They're ready for your Easter basket or tablescape. I'll include a list down below in the description for all of the substrates, materials, tools, adhesives, and grout that I used on these eggs today in case you'd like to create some Easter eggs of your own. Question of the day, let me know down in the comments if you've ever made mosaic Easter eggs, and if so, what material did you use? I would love to hear. Thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up as it really does help my channel, and subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell notification so you never miss a single upload, and let me know in the comments if there's something you'd like me to cover in a future video. I'll see you soon. Bye. How are we looking? Look good. Am I... Alrighty then. Alright. We're done. Okay, that's better. Mucho bueno. I know what you want to see. You want to see this one. What? Look at that. It's not even in focus. So much. The camera is going, oh my goodness, I can't even. Nope, I didn't like that. Nope. Automatic, tick, 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 tick. Not a quick project, but wowza. Check it out. Okay. Oh, yeah. Wowza. So fun. So fun. These are just like, I love them. I would love to see a whole basket of the Pique Assiette. I think that that is just wow. So fun. Okay. Alrighty then. This next egg is blah, 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 blah. And it's combining what's it combining? I don't know. Ba-ba. Where were we? Golly. What material did you use? If you're looking for more mosaic inspiration, you can check out one of these 2 videos. Until then, see ya. I'll see you in the next video.